What's up, everybody? Hope everybody's doing great out there tonight. Man, it's beautiful here in Sweet Home, Alabama. Finally, since the rain cleared out. We had a little storm in earlier. I guess it's just now cleared out. But anyway, I just want to get on here. Talk about, are we in the end of days? Or are we in the beginning of sorrows? What does that mean, right? Well, let's talk about that, right? I feel like Revelation chapter 12, verse 14. Okay, so it says, and I've had some people on here, I put out a short video the other day, and it was like, hey, this ain't, I don't know. Some people say one thing, some people say another, right? But I'm trying to say, you had, just like you had the right to choose your interpretation, like I did, you know what I mean? And I'm just trying to say, I didn't even choose it. I read it for myself, dude. I didn't choose nothing, you know what I mean? What I have read and studied is what I'm telling you. And I'm sitting here with a notebook full of all these different, theories on the book of Revelation. I'm telling you, man, that a lot of people, want to shrug off Isaac Newton, you know what I mean? And a little bit of his theories and stuff like that, man, and mathematics. I'm just trying to say, why in the book of Daniel did he give us these time periods, right? And that we would know certain signs that would, start this type of period, you know what I mean? And they have, for Daniel's 70-week theory, they up to the day he died on the cross, and everything was fulfilled. They said that was Daniel's 70-week prophecy that, the Old Testament would have been fulfilled, you know what I mean? Or, when Jesus, the Messiah, died on the cross, right? And like when Jesus said it was finished. And that's why I believe that, you know what I mean? But I'm just trying to say, right? I don't know about a lot of things, but I'm just trying to tell you. I've studied it and I've heard people talk about it. Daniel chapter 7, verse 25 talks about a time of 1,260 days, 3.5 years, that these saints will be oppressed on the earth, right? That they will be handed over to the Antichrist. And some people want to disagree. Excuse me. Want to disagree with the little horn, and say this or that. But I'm just trying to tell you. So, my argument for that is that, okay, so we know that the saints will be persecuted for times, and dividing of time, right? Which we know is 1,260 days. We know is 3.5 years of a 7-year period that we know starts when Israel makes a pact with the Antichrist, right? Supposed to be like a Middle Eastern, right? A Syrian king, you know what I mean? Some people say. But anyways, it says. And see, I'm just trying to say, if the saints can be persecuted this time, right? And we think that all these people put in all this into our head, see that we're not supposed to worry about it. And see, this is what kills me about the Protestants and the Pentecostals. And, and honestly, kind of like, you can see why a lot of people favor Catholicism. Because look, man, what I'm trying to say is that if you study scripture enough, that you will realize that, obviously the saints are going to go through some times, right? And I'm just trying to say, if it is a pre-trib rapture, then there wouldn't be no saints left on the earth for the Antichrist to even test. So it don't make no sense, that, and I'm just trying to say, everybody I've heard talk about the book of Revelation, they're like, have you studied the prophecies of Daniel? Have you studied the prophecies of Daniel? Well, that is Daniel chapter 7, verse 25. And if that's talking about the Antichrist, the end of times, this 3.5, year period, of a 7-year period that is supposed to be a treaty between Israel and the Antichrist. And I'm trying to tell you that I've studied this all the way down. And there's nothing that's happened in history like it has up to now that fulfills all those prophecies, man. You know what I mean? Especially a lot of what's going on with Israel now, man. I mean, this was what was predicted. I mean, like, I'm just trying to say, dude. Anyways. So, it talks about in Revelation chapter 7, referring back to the same period of 7 years, right? Same 7-year period, right? Same one. And see, a lot of people want to argue about this woman, right? I don't want to hear it tonight. I'm just trying to say, I'm getting out my theory and why I've done all the studying. And, hey, what's going on, Carson? But, it says, and a lot of people, and so do I, believe that this woman here represents the church, right? And people want to have all these, they don't. I'm just trying to say, we can talk about it all day, but we wouldn't have all these scholars that came down to this conclusion also that I came down with also. So this woman, right? We're given 2 wings of a great eagle that she might fly into the wilderness, into her place where she is nurtured for a time, times, and half a time from the face of the serpent. So we know in Daniel chapter 7, verse 25, that these saints will be persecuted for 3.5 years. See, we got to quit letting this. See, I'm telling you, man, that was the biggest lie the devil ever convinced us, that he doesn't exist. Just like, hey, you ain't going to have to worry about this because you're going to be raptured up. That's what the church has been teaching for all this time. And telling these people not to worry about it. And when I'm trying to tell you about it, you better watch out now, because I'm telling you, if you ain't seen the change online, you ain't going to see it. You know what I mean? It's already happening, man. And I'm telling you, when Israel made peace this last time with the Philistine, and all this broke, you know what I mean? I'm trying to tell you, dude, there's something to do with that 7 hills, the scarlet beast, right? That scarlet woman, right? She's, some people believe that she represents the one world religion, man. And I'm trying to tell you that, man, with that pact happening again, which also, if you think about it, kind of happened within U.S. Constitution itself. The U.S. Constitution, a right of freedom, express, religious freedom, right? This was intended on that Muslims, Jews, and Christians could all worship together under the same thing. A lot of people don't even know that, dude. A lot of people, this is all Christian. If you go back and study it, that's not true. All the people signed the Declaration of Independence were not all Christians. I mean, don't get me wrong, they, didn't hate Christianity neither. That's what the whole point was, them to bring it together under one world religion. It's not that all religions would be the same, it's that they could all worship together. You know what I'm saying? And, I don't know that to be 100, but I'm just trying to say, it's definitely, you got to consider that fact, right? Okay, so, the woman, right? So she, for 1,260 days, is saved. And look, and if you read in the book of Daniel, go back to it talks about there's 30 more days. And they believe this is when the abomination of desolation is setting up. And see, they're already online right now trying to act like that don't exist neither. I'm telling you, man. And look, I'm about to get to my point. Okay, so let's go to Revelation. See, chapter 2. Actually, no, chapter 3. See, because I believe, don't get me wrong, that the rest of these churches are going to go too, right? But I believe that in the rapture that's going to be living, right, that it's going to evolve the church of Sardis, and I can't remember. See, and I believe that out of Sardis, the church of Sardis, which be a church age, which represents this old church. You know what I mean? We know who I'm talking about. And then you got the missionary, the true believing followers of Jesus church. And then you got this lukewarm, and we know who they are, man. You know, I don't even got to start to say that because we all know. You know what I mean? We know. You know what I mean? And if you don't know, I couldn't sit here and convince you that anyway. But anyway, I believe that these three churches are going to be around when the rapture is going to happen, right? And this all goes in a timeline. If you go through the churches, through the first, Revelation chapter 2 and 3, I believe these churches stand for ages. And obviously, what gets me the most, that you got to think, right? The first church age is what? Ephesus. And guess who was at Ephesus and started their ministry, their ministry was mainly there, was John the disciple. How crazy is that, right? And that would be when the book of Revelation was written. So I believe that you got Ephesus, right? Which emphasizes John's church, right? Him starting it there. The book of Revelation being written, and all this, says. So this would be the apostolic church, right? Church age. And I figured this goes from about 33 to about 100 in the first century, right? Then you got the church of Smyrna, right? The persecuted church. And I believe these first two church ages, and if you read through it like I have, and even in the church of Smyrna, this church wasn't even, condemned by Jesus. I'm telling you, dude, because it was so terrible what happened to them in Rome. So, and this took place from 100 to 312, right? Then you got Pergamum, which would be the state church, and this one all the arguments coming out now about Constantine and all this. So this was from 312 to 590, right? And we know that Constantine stopped all the persecution to the church, right? Made it legal to where you could worship. Thyatira. And this is pretty much symbolizes the church age of the Pope. And this is when people started refuting the Pope. You know what I mean? I'm talking about, man, they got crazy throughout the years. The Crusades, the Napoleonic Wars. Then you got the Church of Sardis, Philadelphia, and Laodicea, right? Which I believe these three churches will be present when that happens, right? This represents the old Protestant Reformation church. You know what I mean? We know what we're talking about. Then the Philadelphia is the missionary, evangelistic, relationship with God church. Then you got, which, also for the Protestant Reformation, there's a lot that's going to come through it too. I mean, I believe there will be present at the rapture. The old people. You know what I'm talking about? Then we got the New Age church, man, with all these goodness, they let anybody in, they practicing witchcraft, the gays, and all this, it's crazy, right? They no self-respect, people committing adultery, they, not a prayer worship, you know what I mean? I mean, kind of, to their extent, but, it's not like, God intended on it to be, you know what I mean, dude? It's really, and I understand, some people, but I also believe there's going to be something going there because there's going to be true believers. So, it says, okay, and to the angel of the church of Sardis write these things, he that has the 7 spirits of God and the 7 stars, I know thy works, that you have a name that that you have a name that thou livest, but are dead. You know what I'm saying? Be watchful and strengthen the things which remain that are ready to die, for I have not found thy works perfect before God. And I'm telling you, dude. And a lot of it's because they're running off the youth, man. It got, it started becoming just like, the Pope and all that did, man. That they want to deny it all they want to. But in the Protestant system, it's just no different than the Catholic system. It's just a different name for these guys and this guy. You know what I mean? They held their elders, but, the church authority, sola scripture, these are church traditions and, sacraments. What I'm trying to tell you is that my authority is Jesus Christ. You know what I mean? Jesus Christ died on the cross for my sins. You know what I mean? He said, pick up my cross and follow him. So that's what I do, and that's what the name of this channel is, that I follow Jesus. And that's how it's going to stay. But he says, and see, this is how I know. Now let me pay attention. He says, remember, therefore, how you have received and heard, and hold fast and repent. Therefore thou shalt not watch. I will come on thee as a thief, and thou shalt not know what hour I shall come upon. See, right there, he's telling you, around this church time, I'm coming. And look, that's what I'm trying to tell you, dude. These people were held guilty. I'm telling you what, the Protestant churches and the Baptist churches, and they have made just as many atheists in the last 10 years as the Catholics have, bro, if not more. That's what I'm trying to tell you, man. That point your finger at yourself. You know what I mean? Because it's y'all's fault. You know what I mean? I ain't even been around in churches. You know, I've been doing this online myself, dude. You know what I mean? You wonder why you look around in your pews and there ain't no kids? Because you know what I mean? You're a hypocrite, man. You know, you're here about heresy, man. You know, and they see it in you, man. And they see it in all these people, man. They're supposed to be leaders of them, and they're not, man. They're like, oh, if you don't go to my church, you're going to hell. No, if you have a relationship with God, all things are possible through God. You know what I mean? Not through man, not through church tradition, not through sacrament, through God. It said that God himself made them his children. You know what I mean? Not the church. You know what I mean? God, dude. And don't get me wrong, the church is a great place. Anywhere to pray and worship and is dedicated to God, that's an awesome thing, man. You know what I mean? I encourage church going. Man, I wish I had a church I could go to anytime I wanted to. And just go pray and worship whenever I wanted to. Because I'm telling you, man, you know, throughout my 20s, I've seen some crazy times. But now all I want to do is worship and praise, you know, God. You know what I mean? Telling people, man, what Jesus has done in my life and what he can do for yours. You know what I'm saying? And that's what I'm trying to tell you, that these three church ages, I'm telling you, like it specifically tells right here that it says, thou hast a few names, even in Sardis, which have not defiled their garments, and they shall walk with me in white, for they are worthy. See, these people are going to be given white robes, man. You know what I mean? And he even talks about that in the book of Revelation, chapter 7, man. This is what I'm trying to tell you. And I'm trying to tell you, I could, man, if people would let me, I could, man, dude, I could show you so many things, dude, you know, that God has showed me. And that I'm telling you, dude, God is working in all our lives right now. And I'm telling you, it has a lot to do with all these prophecies that people don't even know of or heard of, man. And then he talks about, then you got, let's see, he says, for he that overcomes, the same shall be clothed in white raiment. I will not blot out his name out of the book of life, but I will confess his name before my Father and before his angels. You know, of course, Jesus says, you know, if you got an ear, hear, you know what I mean? What the Spirit said to the churches. Then you got the angel of the church of Philadelphia, right? He said, write these things, that he that says, he that is holy, he that is true, he that has the key of David, he that opens and no man shuts, and shuts and no man opens. I know thy works behold, I have set before thee an open door, and no man can shut it. For thou hast a little strength, and hast kept my word, and hast not denied my name. You know what I mean? And I'm telling you, that's all these missionaries going out here, man. I'm telling you. Dude, if y'all have not read the Left Behind series, you got to, and if you have read them, you ain't went back and read the, because see, after they pretty much almost finished it, they went back and wrote 3 more for the beginning. Man, if y'all ever read the Rapture book, oh man, dude, it was just, I teared up when Peter and Paul got their crowns, you know what I mean? And, you know, they threw their crowns back at the feet of Jesus, man. I'm telling you, dude. Because I've watched a lot of movies and stuff like that, and I feel real close to Peter. You know, I don't know why I always have. And it's just that, even Paul sometimes, you know, but it's just that, man, I don't know, man. I even teared up, you know. It was just like, man. But he said, behold, I will make them of the synagogue of Satan, which say they are Jews and are not, and but do lie. Behold, I will make them come and worship before thy feet to know that I have loved thee. And I could get in that. I could talk about that for hours, man. But look, you just want to take it in what you take it in too. You know what I mean? Because if you don't know, you ain't going, I can't explain it. And I was trying to say, then the next part says, because thou hast kept the word of my patience, I will also keep thee from the hour of temptation, which shall come upon the whole world to try them that dwell upon the earth. Behold, I will come quickly, and hold thy fast, which thou hast, and that no man take your crown. He that overcomes, I will make a pillar of the temple of my God. He shall go no more out, and I will write upon him the name of my God, and the name of the city of my God, which is the new Jerusalem, which comes down out of heaven from my God, and I will write upon him my new name. See, this is just like Jesus talking about in chapter 14 of John, verses 1 through 3. He said he's going to prepare a place for us, right? He said that in his Father's house there are many mansions. You know what I mean? And he said he was coming back. He was going to receive us into himself. And then we know we got the church of Laodicea. And see, well, maybe back up to Philadelphia for a second. But he said, I will also keep thee from the hour of temptation which shall come upon the world, to try them that dwell upon it, right? So that's Church of Philadelphia. And you go back to the Church of Sardis before then. He said, remember thou for how thou hast received and heard, and hold fast and repent. What does he mean by that, right? What did Paul say in Galatians chapter 3? He said, go back to where you started. That was what was right. He said, grace through faith. And now look at the internet right now arguing over this same stuff. I'm telling you, dude, people don't want to admit it, man, but this is the way the devil keeps the church confused. This is the way the devil keeps the church going at itself, man. I'm telling you, man, people want to holler crusades all the time. And that's only because people don't understand what happened during the crusades. That's because you don't know history. Last thing the Christians want is another crusades. You know what I'm saying? Because that did not end well for us. You know what I mean? We had a few good moments, but in the end, it was totally unworth it. All it did was cause division in the church. Really, that's all it come down to. And then they got beat up by the Muslims. Goodness, man. Look at all the dynasties that come through there. Dude, you got Islam and Muslims ruled Jerusalem for over almost, 1,200 years. Almost 1,300 years. That's even longer than the Jews have had it. It's crazy. It's crazy. But even, I believe, in the church of Laodicea, he does say that, don't get me wrong, all the lukewarm ones he's going to spit out. But he also does say that, behold, I stand at the door and knock. Any man that hear my voice and open the door, I will come into him, and will sit with him and be with him, right? To him to overcometh, I will grant to sit with me in my throne, even as I have overcome, and I have sat down with my Father in his throne. So, and honestly, for every church age, I believe there's going to be, people go. But what I'm trying to say is that we know. Let's see. Okay. And I believe, now this is what happens, right? Right before the rapture. We know that the two witnesses are going to start preaching, right? In Jerusalem and all that, dude. You're going to have all this crazy stuff going on. Ain't nobody going to be able to touch them, right? Okay, so they're going to convert 144,000 Jews. See, they're not going to be converted until after we're raptured up. And I believe that's when they're going to be believers. You know what I mean? You got the two witnesses that's killed public. And And I honestly believe sometimes that we're going to go before the witnesses die and they go up. But honestly, I don't know, man. Sometimes I think it happens after that. And I believe, boom, then you got the next 3.5 years. And I feel like you got a 30-day period where the Antichrist breaks the treaty with Israel, and then he just persecutes, and destroys everybody that don't take the mark, right? Then you got the end of that 3.5 years. You got the 7 bowl judgments and all that, final judgments, whatever you want to call them. And then you got, Jesus comes down, Armageddon happens, dude. And I'm talking about, man, he tosses the Antichrist and the false prophet in the fire of hell. And then you got a 1,000-year reign. New Jerusalem comes down in the sky. Jesus reigns on earth for 1,000 years. You know what I mean? Then the devil's let out, and then they deal with him. You know what I mean? But what I'm trying 3.5 years. You know what I mean? You don't want to go through this great tribulation. And see, a lot of people want to get this confused here, man. You know what I mean? And they want to say this and that. And this is also, I've proven that they have added. Don't get me wrong, I know it might sound crazy, but, it even says in the back of this, a lot of people refer to the whole Bible, they're saying, hey, what he's saying in the end of Revelation when he's like, don't add to none of these prophecies, he's talking about the book of Revelation. At that time, when the book would have been written, it would have been written on a scroll or something by itself, probably, you know what I mean? So, I'm telling you, they added the word the in the newer translations on it. In the King James Version that was written 1611, it says, and see, this goes back to show you that these people, in Daniel chapter 7, verse 25, that the Antichrist will be able to oppress the holy people of the Most High for 1,260 days. And we got, see right here in chapter 7, it talks about the marking of the 144,000, which I believe involves, the 2 witnesses preaching during this time in chapter 11. Like I said, this ain't all in order like a lot of people want to tell you. I'm telling you, just like Ken Peters was having those dreams in the 80s, man, and he was going through the 90s and trying to, figure out when all that happened through the early 2000s. He realized that he was seeing just different parts of the vision, just like John is throughout this, you know what I mean? And sometimes he's seeing the same thing through a different angle, you know what I mean? And you gotta, if you don't read and research and, pile this together, you'll never figure that out, man. You could have somebody read through this and tell you it just goes in order, and this is just how it is, man. It was how it was wrote down. No, what it is, it's a book of prophecies. You know what I mean? Okay, so what I'm trying to say is you got the marking of the 144,000, right? All right. Then after that, and everybody wants to get to, there ain't going to be but 144,000 in the rapture like the Jehovah's Witnesses say. I was trying to tell you that's insanity, because after that, he sees 144 people marked. And I'm trying to tell you that a lot of this is prophetic, man. It's talking about the 144,000 Jews being marked on earth, right before the rapture happens. Then you got, after this happens, it talks about John in verse 9, chapter 7 of the book of Revelation. After this, he said, behold, and lo, a great multitude, which no man could number, of all nations and kindred and people and tongues, stood before the throne and before the Lamb, clothed in white robes and palms in their hands. Right? And also, I believe it's in chapter 6. No? I think it's in 6 somewhere. I can't remember exactly. Yeah, here it is. Where he sees, the martyrs crying, right? And they're asking God, how much longer is it going to be? How many more people, right? Then he talks about, and white robes were given to them, right? And it was said unto them that they should rest for a little season until their fellow servants and also their brethren should be killed, as they should be fulfilled. And I'm telling you right here, and this is in the fifth seal, dude, that right here is the 1,260 days that we're going to go through this. And then boom, the rapture's going to happen, right? And then John showed a multitude that you couldn't count, right? Clothed in white, it said, they stood before the throne and before the Lamb, clothed in white robes and palms in their hands, and cried with a loud voice, saying, Salvation to our God, which sat upon the throne, and unto the Lamb. And all the angels stood around about the throne and about the elders and the four beasts, and fell before the throne on their faces and worshipped God, saying, Amen. Blessing and glory and wisdom and thanksgiving and honor and power and might be unto our God forever and ever. Amen. Right? Excuse me. And one of the elders answered, saying unto me, What are these which are arrayed in white robes, and whence came they? Where'd they come from, what he said. And I said unto him, Sir, you knowest. And he said to me, These are which came out of great tribulation. See, if you go to the newer Bibles, they add the great tribulation, which a lot of people is pretty much the title for the last 3.5 years of tribulation. See, I'm telling you, man, in 1611, they just put great tribulation. They would go through, great troubles. You know what I mean? But it's not the great tribulation. And if you go to the newer Bible translations, go to Revelation chapter 7, verse, what was that? 14. I'm telling you, dude, it's nuts. But anyways, it says, and they have washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. Right? Okay. So, is there anything else I want to add to tonight? Let's see here. Okay. Yeah, that's right. Okay, so both Daniel chapter 7, verse 25, and Revelation chapter 12, verse 14, referring to the woman protected from the dragon, describes a period of a time, times, and half a time, which represents 3.5 years, right? Midpoint events. Daniel chapter 12, verse 11, that's what I was looking for. 12, verse 11 mentions 1,290 days, which some interpret as a 30-day period beyond the 1,260 days, right? Marking the abomination of desolation that triggers the second half of the period, right? Of the, last 3.5 years. And see, this aligns with the midpoint mentioned in Revelation chapter 12, verses 14 through 16. See, the saints and persecution. Daniel chapter 7, verse 25 states that the saints will be given into the hand of the Antichrist for 3.5 years. And mid-trib people argue that the church is raptured before the ultimate wrath of God in the final 3.5 years. So, let's see here. And we know that there is 7 seals and trumpets in Revelation, and they represent progressive end times judgments. And seals, 1 through 4 release the 4 horsemen: conquest, war, famine, and death. Then you got the 5th and 6th seal brings the martyr Christ, massive earthquakes, and cosmic chaos. Then the 7th seal introduces 7 trumpets, with the 7 trumpets signaling the final kingdom. So, like I said, Isaac Newton, through his extensive study of Daniel and Revelation, concluded that the Bible prophecy was a precise roadmap of history designed by God. Ultimately, predicting the world might end around 2060, he believed that the text foretold the rise of corruption in the church, which he believed was the Antichrist, right? The fall of Rome, the eventual return of Christ, and a 1,000-year reign of the saints. So his method of interpretation was that he would use a strict, systematic approach, similar to mathematics, to unlock prophetic imagery, believing that prophecies were meant to be understood to guide believers through the last age. So Newton also believed in divine plan. He argued that prophecy was intended to demonstrate God's direct, active, and sovereign governance over history. Like, God is in control of everything, which is what I believe also. So we got the first 7 seals, right? And I believe there's 2, the church age theory, I believe there's going to be 2 church ages that went through this, which obviously we know that, Ephesus and, what was it, and Smyrna, right? Okay, so we know that the first seal was broken around that time because of the white horse that symbolizes, the Roman Empire, right? Because when the Romans would win, a war or whatever, they'd come back and they'd ride through, Rome and on these big white horses, you know what I mean? And that was like their signal, their sign. We know when the first seal was broken is, this with many with a conquering crown, which symbolizes the Roman Empire, I believe. You know what I mean? The start of the Antichrist. You got Nero, goodness, man, and dementia, all them people, man, that was just terrible people. Okay, then you got, like I said, the second red horse, and this would be the second seal. The red horse means great warfare, and the third seal, black, meant famine and economic collapse. The fourth seal, pale horse, plague and death. Fifth seal, martyrs under the altar crying. And like I said, we just read this just a second ago. All right, so then we get to the sixth seal, right? Cosmic disturbances, the darkening sun, the falling stars, and the earthquakes. And I've heard, several different theories about these falling stars. They believe, Derek Prince believed that they would be angels falling in the end of time like they were in the beginning. You know what I mean? And, I've been thinking about this theory, for a while that, how it says that Satan brought a third of the angels with him? You almost wonder if that's over time. And then in the end, there's this big battle. You know what I mean? I don't know, man. I'm real wondering when all this, but even Jesus said that he's seen Satan fall like lightning. You know what I mean? In the book of Luke, chapter 10, I think. It's in the end of chapter 10. And it's when he's talking to the 70, when they get back. Okay, so I believe that around the sixth seal and around between the fourth, I think it's where did I write that out? Okay, so, right, okay, there. So I believe, right, the end time, after I've been studying all this, and this timeline of history, right, and I believe that we're somewhere between the sixth seal and between the fourth and sixth trumpet. And I can go back through tell you historical reasons why, all the way through the seals. Like I said, it starts with the Roman Empire to World War I. Has a lot to do with it. I'm telling you, dude, and you wouldn't believe. Erupting volcanoes into the ocean are signs, and look at, the world's fresh water. You got the third trumpet, this wormwood guy, right? And you got a third of the water is supposed to be poison, right? And through scientific research, they believe at one point there was like 3 or 4% of the water fresh water you could drink. That ain't including glaciers and all that stuff. This is just fresh water. Now they don't believe that there's 1%. So what did that tell you? A third of the water's been poisoned. That's what I'm trying to say, dude. That could be a sign of the third trumpet. And I'm just trying to say, the fourth trumpet, a third of the sun, moon, and the stars are darkened. And I'm trying to tell you that there's the last few months or so, and I'm telling you, I've never noticed this in my whole life, that the moon, when it's going through its cycle, and I don't know if I can say it tonight now, but I'm telling you, it probably can. I don't really know. Okay. So I don't see it right now. But I'm trying to tell you that in the last couple months, right, that there has been a shift. And I'm telling you, dude, it all goes back. Like I said, you need to do some research on Linda Courtney and Ken Peters. And I studied Ken Peters first before Linda Courtney. And it's all on my page if you want to check it out too. But look. So I believe. And see, Ken Peters and a lot of other people, see, and even Isaac Newton thought that this, the fifth trumpet, the demonic locusts, some people think this is a rise of Islam. Right? And also a lot of people think this is a demonic wave of some kind. I believe that it's a spiritual battle, a lot of it, man. And I think somewhere around the sixth trumpet, I think that's going to be the last trumpet that we're here. And then the seventh trumpet will reveal, the rest of it, dude. And the reason why I think, and see, even Isaac Newton thought this, but he thought even the vial judgments were going on at the same time, which I believe they happened just in the last 3.5 years. But I believe that at the same time that the seals are being broken, the trumpets are blowing. You know what I mean? I'm just trying to say that John, it's not revealed to him till this certain point, man. And all this other happened. The reason why I say this, because in the sixth seal, when they say that the sun's darkened, the fallen stars, and the earthquakes, right? Well, also in the fourth trumpet, a third of the sun, moon, and the stars are darkened, right? Let's see. You got all this cosmic, like I said, dude, these earthquakes and all this stuff, man, But anyways, guys, I believe after all that happens, you got, like I said, the 3.5 years, you got, the Battle of Armageddon. Well, actually, during the 3.5 years, the end of it, though, you got the preaching of the 144,000. You got a bunch of people that saved, too, I believe. But also, I believe there's a bunch that's going to go towards the beast because, if you can't buy or sell, and, there's going to be terrible things happening. I mean, when it comes to your life, and, your children and all this other stuff, situations go on, man, and it's survive or be killed, people are going to act, we're going to find out who truly is and truly who ain't, right? Then I believe you got the Battle of Armageddon, the fall of Babylon, the Battle of Armageddon, the Millennium Kingdom. And then, like I said, after that, you got Satan's released, and then he's defeated. Then you got the final judgment. Then you got the New Jerusalem, where we live with God forever, right? So, it's going to be beautiful, man, And I'm just trying to say that I could talk about this for hours on end because I got a lot of information. And that ain't even the church age theory that I went through in detail, because I could explain to you why I think that too, throughout these churches. I can go from each church area and show you and going back comparing it to the verses, and I'm telling you, it matches up perfectly. I believe Isaac Newton was right. I believe in a divine plan myself. I believe that, God done all this so he could demonstrate his direct, active, and sovereign governance over history. That he is in control. Always has been, always will be. So everybody, I appreciate it. This is a good lay down of the beginning. I'm gonna go through and keep hitting, chopping at it a little bit at a time. And the reason why I said that is this the end of time, the beginning of sorrows, because I believe, just like a lot of people believe about the mid-trib, that the first 3.5 years are the beginning of sorrows. And even Jesus says this, and what was that? Mark chapter 13, verse 8. He's talking about all these signs, right? Yeah, I'd have been on here a little bit longer. I was going. It always happens that way sometimes. But anyways, it says, Jesus said, take heed, lest don't let any man deceive you. For they shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many. And when you shall hear of wars and rumors of wars, and be not in trouble, for such things must, needs to be, right? But the end shall not yet be. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall earthquakes be in divers places, and there shall famines and troubles. These are the beginning of sorrows. He's talking about the first couple seals, man. I'm trying to tell you, dude, that even Jesus was trying to tell us, man, that we was going to go through. So, man, we're going to have to get out of this, oh, we're not going to be here thing. Because I'm telling you, you're going to be here for some of it, and I'm telling you, dude, these are going to be the true tests. But God bless everybody. Appreciate everybody coming out. It's been a good night. I'll see y'all next time. I'm out of here. Peace. God bless. In Jesus' name.